Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing well out there this morning and having a great start to your day and a fantastic week out there so far. We got another day of severe weather out ahead of us. We have severe storms ongoing right now this morning. Of course, yesterday was very active. We had the infamous high risk that was issued across some areas of the southern plains. We had a few tornadoes at least. There was a couple that did significant damage in a couple towns in northeast Oklahoma last night, and unfortunately it happened after the sun went down. We kind of thought that was going to happen. The low-level jet was going to kick in right after the sunset, and that's pretty much what ended up unfolding. But I will say this, and I'll say it in a way that I don't want to offend anybody, but it could have been a lot worse. It really could have. You know, they issued the tornado watch yesterday for Oklahoma, and it said several strong tornadoes likely. And by the time they do all the survey reports, I'm sure we're probably going to have some, EF2, maybe EF3 tornadoes that reported, but it could have been worse is what I'm trying to say. So fortunately, thankfully it did not, unfold with the worst case scenario. But unfortunately, I am hearing about fatalities in one of those two towns, or maybe both, in northeast sections of Oklahoma. So of course, we're always praying for you guys. We're praying for anybody that was impacted in any of the states like Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri. Let me know what y'all saw overnight if you live in these states, Arkansas, Missouri, and all those states I just mentioned. But we have another day of severe weather out ahead of us, and that's what we're here to do. We'll spend a lot of time on that, trying to figure that one out. We'll have everything time stamped out for you folks to take advantage of. And we will speak a little bit on tomorrow's severe weather threat, which will be a much larger area than today's. And then we'll speak a little bit on Thursday's severe weather threat. I understand there's a lot of people in the evenings on the day of a severe weather threat, and I could tell by the views of last night's video, and rightfully so, tuning into the people going live, the storm chasers. But if you are interested in more detailed information the night before a big time severe weather event for the next day, definitely hit me up there. I have a lot more time to dive deep into all the ingredients and all those things like that. Just a little bit on borrowed time in the mornings, but we're going to give you guys a lot of detailed information in this video. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. I have not answered any comments since about Friday, so very behind. I'm hoping to get called up this afternoon to acknowledge everything. It always tears my nerves up when I get behind on comments, especially those prayer requests. All right, with all that being said, let's get rocking and rolling. So, low pressure up here. There's a surface low up here. There's another one that's going to develop somewhere in this region later today. This will promote severe weather, basically from Kentucky, the Ohio Valley, all the states surrounding that region. We're going to get more severe weather, most likely all the way into the Carolinas and Virginia today. A little bit of a surprise and yesterday afternoon and evening across the Carolinas. We had numerous severe storms. Not as much of a surprise in Tennessee, where we actually had a confirmed tornado or two out there in eastern Tennessee, but still, we had a lot more widespread severe weather than I was even expecting across the southeast. And I don't mean to say it like that, like, I'm the man when it comes to forecasting weather. It just was very unexpected there for sure. But we got some more rain out here in the PD of South Carolina, a little bit of shower activity across Virginia, North Carolina, Delmarva, and then, of course, this area of storms that we were expecting to be chugging through Illinois, the Boot Hill, Missouri this morning is still ongoing, strong, even some pockets in this line that is reaching severe limits. This will continue all the way through Wisconsin, make it all the way to the Great Lakes region, sweep across the entire Midwest and Ohio Valley throughout the morning hours, and eventually more action will fire up behind this, and that is the action we have to watch. Area rain extending all the way up into the Dakotas. I was looking at some watches and warnings, and I'm about to show you this. There's blizzard warnings in the higher elevations of Montana this morning. Pretty wild stuff, as a lot of moisture is getting slung back into the northern Rockies, and the air is just cold enough still, even for early May standards, for snow. So that's what's going on. Northeast pretty quiet, southwest pretty quiet, and even the southern plains is quiet this morning. You just got to clean up after what happened last night. Watches, warnings, and advisories in this kind of color right in here, this mustard color, that is high wind warnings. It's very windy out there. There's some winter storm warnings up for the Black Hills and, different areas across the northern Rockies, up in Montana, Wyoming, even like northern Utah. So windy conditions, combined with heavy wet snow, blizzard warnings in this red color right here. A lot going on. Red flag warnings in this hot pink color down here scattered across the southern high plains and New Mexico areas of Arizona, still that fire danger with so much strong wind action and dry air. And then we do have those tornado watches that are continuing across this region. Some of these will eventually get dropped, and some of this is old. We'll have to update this and see if this can come in for us. And yeah, no updated information. Tornado watches continue for certain areas, but they will get dropped throughout the morning hours. Some flash flood warnings up. So this is what's going on. The eastern U.S. is quiet. We're going to end up getting some tornado watches issued for the Ohio Valley today as we get deeper into the morning and afternoon hours. Excessive rainfall outlook. We will watch the same area that runs the risk of severe weather. Southern Ohio, very small section of western West Virginia, northern Kentucky, and then southern Indiana has that pocket right here of at least a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles at any given point. So there is a risk of flash flooding today. And then let's break down this. Excuse me, voice is crackling. Excuse me. Storm Prediction Center outlook. Latest information as of around 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Central Time. Just note, you guys know this. You saw what happened yesterday morning. We could have an upgrade or a downgrade or a shrinkage, or it broadens out as far as the outlook area. I don't think this is going to upgrade to a moderate risk at all. Could be totally wrong, but I would say I have some pretty high confidence. We're going to keep this in an enhanced risk today as far as the confidence level. But enhanced risk up for this region, slight risk around it, marginal risk. I want you to look at this all the way up here to Wisconsin. I mean, halfway up lower Michigan. This is really for that line of storm sweeping through this morning. Marginal risk extending all the way into the mid-Atlantic, upper southeast portion, all the way down to the deep south, all the way back down here to Texas. But let's just zoom into this area right into here. That's exactly what we're going to do. Here it is. And I know that it's not showing towns and cities down here in Tennessee and Kentucky, but I'm going to show you a different graphic here in a second. But enhanced risk up for higher populated regions, guys. Level 3 out of 5. This includes Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, Louisville, almost down to Evansville, Indianapolis, Bloomington. I mean, Lafayette, you're right on the fringe. Somebody said that you guys pronounce Lafayette up here in Indiana different than a Lafayette in Louisiana, but maybe I'm just remembering something different. Toledo, you're in the slight. Ann Arbor, Lansing, slight risk. Detroit, marginal risk. Athens, areas of western West Virginia, the slight risk. The southern sections of Kentucky are in a slight risk, level 2 out of 5. And basically the eastern section and southern section of Illinois, all the way down here to the Boot Hill, Missouri, and northeastern sections of Arkansas and northern sections of Tennessee. Everybody, you guys are in the slight risk. Marginal risk in the dark green. What is this driven off of? Tornadoes. In the yellow area, there's a 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location in this area. Okay? But if you notice, black outline region, black dashes going in between. What does that mean? It means there's a 10% chance of a stronger tornado within 25 miles at any given point. That's an EF2 or higher, so we do have the risk of strong tornadoes today. Brown area, 5% risk of a tornado. Green area, 2% risk. But, you know, the alarming thing about today is this is a higher populated region. I don't think we have the ingredients we had yesterday. I don't even think it's particularly close, but you still got the ingredients. And we know that this area has been very active over the last several weeks, which doesn't necessarily mean anything, but things tend to produce in this area, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The wind outlook, not too bad, not too significant, just a large area that has a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in this entire yellow region. And then the hail outlook, there is a risk of significant hail. Entire yellow area, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And of course, in the black outline region, you have a 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. This includes pretty much everybody that's included in that higher end tornado risk for today. All right. Don't want to ignore you guys in Kentucky down here. And, you know, Tennessee, I'm not going to pull up a separate one from Tennessee. You know, Nashville's right in here, Memphis down here, Dyersburg, Knoxville's in here. Just trying to mention a couple areas, but it would take forever if I broke down each and every state, guys. I mean, this video would go even longer than it normally does. But, you know, up here, Covington, enhanced risk, Lexington, Frankfort, Louisville, enhanced risk, Owensboro, enhanced risk, Bowling Green, you know, Paducah, London, the Eastern Hills of Kentucky, slight risk. So, same kind of deal, you know, in the enhanced risk, you have a 10% risk of a strong tornado, a 10% risk of a tornado in general within 25 miles at any given point here in northern Kentucky. All right, and then there's the wind outlook. 15% risk in the entire state of Kentucky and to northern sections of Tennessee of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And remember, you do have that 5% risk of a tornado all the way down to Nashville today. And then here's the hail outlook. All right. Yellow area extends all the way down here to Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, not quite down to Memphis, but does include the Boot Hill, Missouri. 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. This does get into western West Virginia, as you can tell. And then you have the black outline region. That's a 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. All right, now that we're done with doing that, let's take a look at what the HRRR model is showing for today. Now, we do have that sweeping line of storms that you can see pretty well on radar right now. There it is, sweeping through Illinois. HRRR model, picking up on it pretty decently. And this will continue to chug through the rest of Illinois throughout, the morning hours. I think Chicago, you'll get hit by a pretty hefty line of storms later this morning, all the way up into Janesville, all the way up to Milwaukee. And these line of storms will continue to kind of chug through Indiana just around lunchtime and just after. This is around lunchtime, 12 p.m. We got some convection starting to form down here, some shower and storm activity here in like northern and northwestern Tennessee, a little bit of storm activity ongoing in Louisville. And the thing is you do have to watch. The atmosphere is really getting more prime down here in Kentucky and southern Ohio, not so much in northern Ohio yet. So any of this leftover convection from this line of storms moving through Illinois right now could refire down here in Kentucky, especially the tail end of this line. I want you to watch what happens in Illinois as the atmosphere basically is building ahead of this line and building behind this line. And look how all this scattered shower and storm activity starts to bubble up here around 2 p.m. I'm almost called Illinois, Kentucky. Northern Illinois, southern sections of Wisconsin. Some pretty intense storms. I mean, even up here in southern Wisconsin, it shows some pretty intense storms refiring later on this afternoon after this line of storms this morning moves in. You want to watch these, all the way to Milwaukee, Janesville, everybody up here, Rockford, watch out for some storms, Chicago. Some storms. They're even starting to bubble up here in western Illinois. Look at this look right here. You see these storms in sort of central to east central Illinois. Kind of have that kidney bean look, right? You want to watch those early on, the form. All right, we got a nasty storm down here right where Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia meet. And these will continue. We take it at this point, it's around 4 p.m. Chicago up to Milwaukee, seeing some storm action. Whether it's going to be strong or severe, we got to figure that one out. But we got all this scattered shower and storm activity all the way down to Tennessee, Kentucky. I think it's going to be a little bit more widespread in Kentucky than what this model run is showing. But certainly, I like to look now, up here in Indiana as what it's showing. We're going to have some scattered semi-discrete to discrete supercells throughout Indiana, most likely today. And then we get to about 6 p.m. You got to watch any of these individual storms, especially in northern Kentucky, that get going. But also, look at this storm close to, what is that? That's southwest of Owensboro. Watch out, Bowling Green. Any of these storms in Tennessee could hit severe limits. And then we get to about 7 p.m. Low-level jet ramping over this convection. And you see these individual storms right in here that kind of have that kidney bean look, show that structure of a rotating thunderstorm. Yeah, you want to watch out for all of those. This is around 7 p.m. Toledo right into here, Cleveland here, Dayton right into here. What is it down here to Columbus is over here. Cincinnati, that's the city I was looking for. You want to watch, even though it doesn't show storms over your area for most of the afternoon. This run could be wrong. All we can look at is guidance. We know the ingredients will be there, but all we have are these short-range model runs is for guidance. They're not going to tell us exactly what's going to unfold as far as the actual storm action. But we do know later on this afternoon, early this evening, we could get some supercells up here in southern lower Michigan too. Look at these nasty storms. Large hail, damaging winds, all threat. But we got to watch for some strong tornadoes. Some of these storms are going to produce some tornado warnings, no doubt about it. We're going to have a tornado outbreak. I don't want to say no, but I would say the ingredients certainly aren't as high end as they were yesterday in like Oklahoma and surrounding states. But as we start to get, around midnight, you got a line of storms sweeping, digging down to Kentucky and to Tennessee. And I do think these will eventually lose some steam as they kind of dip down into the southern and central Alps region for sure. But you look at the significant tornado parameter. Remember how highlighted it was yesterday and, back in the southern plains? Well, this is what I mean. As we are starting to get into, this is around midday. This is just shows us what the ingredients for tornadoes, for tornado potential. This doesn't mean if you see a 6 or pockets of purple or white down here, you got a just extremely high end chance of seeing a tornado. The higher the number, just think the better ingredients in the atmosphere there is to produce a tornado with any storms that do develop. And that's the thing. If you don't get any storms developing in all these high end parameter numbers, obviously you ain't going to get a tornado or even a risk for a tornado. So they don't always tell the story. But look how it begins to spike up here all the way into lower Michigan, guys. And it starts to build into Ohio, starts to really climb. These numbers start to climb here as we're getting around 4 or 5 p.m. throughout the state of Indiana, southern Illinois, western Kentucky, all the way down here into the western half of Tennessee. The significant tornado parameter really begins to spike here. And then these storms begin to develop. And just like we kind of explained this in yesterday's video, as soon as these storms start developing, they start to eat up all the ingredients that's being depicted by the significant tornado parameter and taps into the energy that this is showing that's on the table out here. So that's why the numbers lower big time right into here. It's because storms form and then pretty much munch on all the storm energy out there, the Cape, which is that storm energy that will build into this region, no doubt about it. And this will continue. Look how the numbers begin to spike in Ohio, kind of closer to, later in the evening after the sun's starting to set and things like that. But significant tornado parameter will be quite high all the way into the evening, all the way into southern sections of Indiana, all throughout Ohio. It builds into Kentucky, but I do think it starts to drop off significantly as you get closer to midnight, just because, you lose daytime heating, you lose surface heating and all those things. I've never seen that, a -2. Okay, that's crazy. Must be very stable in Indiana later tonight. So, but that shows a good idea of the ingredients on the table. And if we look at the updraft velocity swath, which indicates rotation with some of these storms, just because you have rotation doesn't mean you get a tornado. But you can see how it begins. Look at this area in southern Wisconsin, northern sections of Illinois. I would watch out early this afternoon for you folks. I mean, not being talked about as much. If you look at the Storm Prediction Center, there is a 2% risk of a tornado that extends out into this region. Probably the approach of this surface low. So almost a little triple point up here. Watch out. Southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois for sure. And then you continue to move this forward, and of course it gets lit up right here in this region. We'll take it all the way through Wednesday morning. You see this area in lower Michigan, right near kind of that weaker surface low. But of course you see the kind of slashes through Indiana, through Ohio, especially eastern and southeastern Ohio. I'm sorry, southwestern Ohio. If I mess up my directions, guys, trust me, I know the difference between west and east. You're just spitting out so much information repeatedly, and you're going to mix some words up and directions up. But northern Kentucky, you can see the more highlighted area in northern Kentucky compared to southern Kentucky. But I mean, even like western sections of the state of Kentucky and Tennessee, you got some highlighted colors right here indicating rotation with some of these storms in this particular run, the HRRR model. So a pretty large area, right, runs that risk of tornadoes and with any of these storms. So just look at this and say, hey, if my area gets some storms later on this afternoon, you live in this region right into here, that's going to have the capability of producing a tornado. And you look at the ingredients really quick, and I just want to show you guys the CAPE levels, mixed layer CAPE. Notice this morning, there's a little energy out ahead of this line, not a lot. I mean, sub 1,000, almost said sub 1,000 millibars, sub 1,000 joules per kilogram in CAPE. But you continue to move forward here. If this would move, it's always slow for me. And we take it all the way to about midday. This is about midday, 1-2 p.m. Look at this energy really building in here up the Mississippi Valley. At this point in southern Illinois, you got CAPE values, approaching 1,000 joules per kilogram, 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram in southern Indiana. The entire state of Kentucky, has tons of fuel in the atmosphere. Same thing with Tennessee, points south. But you notice Ohio, it's just starting to build into southwestern Ohio. I think it'll take later on this afternoon before your low-level moisture really builds into this area. And then in response, your higher storm energy will build into this region, your CAPE. So, but just remember, just because you have a lot of high-end CAPE storm fuel in the atmosphere, that doesn't mean you're going to get storms. You got to have forcing, no cap, or not much of a cap in place to get these storms to really fire up develop an updraft. That updraft then takes advantage of all the ingredients in the atmosphere. And that's going to be kind of a good example of that in Arkansas today, Louisiana. If you do get storms that fire, they could produce some nasty weather. It's just, are you going to get any storms that fire? Plenty of forcing up here in the Ohio Valley because you're closer to a shortwave trough, little weak surface low. So all this energy will build up into this region. And I will note for the millionth time, guys, 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram when you have very supportive kinematics, which I'm about to show you, is definitely supportive enough for tornadoes and all threats of severe weather. Okay, but you get some big time fuel for some storms to build into western Tennessee and Kentucky, extreme southern sections of Indiana, around Evansville. The Cape could get all the way up to 4,000 joules per kilogram sometime later this afternoon. So you do want to watch any storms that get going here in western Kentucky. I think that we're going to get a nasty line of storms that develops down here, and they might sweep across the Mid-South and Ohio Valley region throughout the late evening and overnight hours, and eventually they will lose some steam. You see these weird little pockets of bubbles here. That's where storms form and then eat up that fuel in the atmosphere. Here's a good example of it down here in Arkansas. You see how you have these all high-end levels of energy in the atmosphere, and then you get these weird little splotches? That's where storms can fire up, and then they just literally, like Pac-Man, they munch on all the energy in the atmosphere until it's all ate up or not available anymore. And then when it's not available anymore, the storms lose steam and weaken. So obviously the big player into this is your low-level wind field. So this is your low-level jet, 850 millibars, winds about a mile above our heads. All right, so you already got a 40, 45 knot low-level jet riding over, areas of the Mississippi Valley, getting into areas of the eastern Midwest, if that's even a thing, and then starting to move into the Ohio Valley. All right, so at the same time, this is riding right with an open sector that's going to allow for storm development. So, and keep this moving forward, and we get it all the way into this afternoon. Look at this low-level jet really increasing across Indiana. All right, pushing almost 50 knots in certain areas. So you see it's just this one little pocket. There's a low up here. Remember, always with a surface low, it's always going to bring its own low-level jet, if that makes any sense. I like to say it like that. It almost brings its own energy, its own low-level flow with it. There's a ton of mid-level flow out there, but what about that low-level flow that's going to support that damaging wind and tornado threat? Well, that's going to be there right across this region. Okay, I actually could see them extending the 10% risk of tornadoes a little bit further back west. We'll see what happens with that. But, low-level jet later this afternoon into this evening, ramping across this region, supporting that damaging wind threat and supporting that tornado threat all the way down to Tennessee. You notice you get down to Georgia, Alabama, Carolina's not much low-level flow, but right in here, your highest tornado threat. No doubt about it. Okay. So let's break down the rest of the lower 48, and then we'll cover a little bit on tomorrow and Thursday's severe weather risk. So starting off this morning, we got those storms kind of going to lose some steam here in western Tennessee, western Kentucky. Some scattered convection could get going again here all the way down to Louisiana, Mississippi. Kind of outrunning its coverage, though, somewhat with all the storm fuel, but still enough in the atmosphere. Those storms in Tennessee. Look at these storms trying to fire up. I'm going to get a closer look at this, too, just taking a broad look at things. Storms firing up in North Carolina, Virginia. And we're just going to have some isolated, strong to severe storms. And there's that line of storms I was talking about that could form in like western Kentucky, western Tennessee, eat up all that fuel in the atmosphere. And then by the time we're getting into the middle of the night, you see all these storms over Tennessee making their way through in the middle of the night. Some storms forming along the ridge, just along the southern apps. We got some big storms down here in southern Arkansas. And then we get into tomorrow morning, could be dealing with some storms in the Mid-South right here. So I know I brushed through that really fast. Let's take a closer look at this. This does include Tennessee and surrounding states. And, we get into about 1 p.m. Excuse me, lost my voice. 1 p.m. See these storms? Really just impacting the western sections of Tennessee at this point. Some storms down here in northern Mississippi, northwestern Alabama. These could be a little bit more intense than what this is showing. We'll see what happens. And then they start to get really intense. So around 3 or 4 p.m., see these pockets of red and pink. You got to watch out in like Nashville. These storms could be packing a punch. Tupelo down here in Mississippi, you guys could get some storms. You lack forcing down here, but some isolated pockets of storms and downpours are possible all the way down here to Louisiana. And then we continue to move this forward, and we get to about, this is about 9 p.m. Line of storms starting to develop in western Tennessee, western Kentucky, and we'll go on and actually just look at the extension of the HRRR model on this. And we will have to watch these storms that develop later on. Man, this is everywhere. We'll have to watch these storms that develops later on this evening that kind of drapes across the Delta region, southern Arkansas, western Tennessee, and they could, definitely bring some noise overnight tonight, after midnight tonight, into tomorrow morning across, areas of Tennessee, Arkansas, maybe as far south eventually into northern Alabama for sure. So I want to look at the Carolinas, Virginia today. I think there's going to be some intense storms in like western North Carolina. Hickory, watch out. Could be some storms around this area later on this afternoon. I think there's going to be a stronger severe storm or two up here in Virginia too that's not really showing up much. North Carolina, it really likes that area though. Some storms out here in the Outer Banks are possible. Some storms up here near Danville, up here in southern Virginia, northern North Carolina. Got some storms forming in the low country of South Carolina. And I do think we could get some storm action in eastern Tennessee later on today. Eastern Kentucky, you do have that tornado threat. So just be aware of these storms later on. And I do think there could be some storms late tonight, maybe across this region, just very isolated and scattered. Northeast today, quiet this morning. You guys have just kind of taken a back seat to everything, just kind of taking a look at everybody. Been dealing with a pretty relatively calm start to your May, kind of rainy but calm. We've already talked about all the storms in Ohio. I do want to mention some pop-up storms, like I said, in Virginia, Maryland. Watch out. Could get some storms down here, and this section of Maryland right in here in southern and central PA. You got some pop-up storms firing off, maybe all the way into Delaware later this evening. You could get an isolated storm or two. And then all this energy that gets going in the Ohio Valley later on this afternoon, this evening, eventually will move into PA. So western PA later tonight, around midnight, pretty active night. Said night about 8 times there. Western New York, the southern tier, you got a lot of shower and storm activity moving in. Northern West Virginia seeing some storms. You're getting into the wee hours of the morning. A lot of energy just kind of flowing throughout New York State, eastern PA, New Jersey. Some storms kind of rumbling through western sections of southern New England. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning to most likely a lot of rain, maybe some storm activity across the Adirondacks, Vermont, New Hampshire, all of southern New England probably experiencing some heavy rains in this area. So South Central U.S., you'll take a break today, you'll take a breather, and I think things will remain calm for at least one day, and then they could get very active again, especially for maybe, sections of eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, and eastern Texas. But, you get up to Kansas, Nebraska, I think things will take a chill pill for a little bit. So we get into this evening, you can already see the approaching low. That's this low right here that you see this evening. This is probably going to get the job done as far as severe weather across the entire, Ohio Valley down to the Mississippi Valley tomorrow. But as far as today, not a whole lot going, but it's already feeling the influence of this low right here in southern Arkansas. This actually helps aid in providing lift. And then this is going to be a weaker low. We'll wake up tomorrow morning, maybe some shower and storm activity getting going here in northeast Oklahoma. We'll see what happens with that. But a pretty calm day today. You'll have an opportunity to breathe a little bit and to recover for at least the next 24 hours. Up here in the north central U.S., we'll have a line of storms that sweeps through the upper Midwest. Chicago will get it. Milwaukee will get it. And this area rain will continue to make its way all the way up into the UP and Michigan. But guys, I do want to reiterate this, right? These storms in southern Wisconsin, I've mentioned this already earlier in the video. Please be careful of these. They could produce a tornado today. It's only a 2% risk in this area. Northern Illinois, southern sections of Wisconsin. A tornado can happen from these storms today. So be aware, even extreme eastern Iowa. Okay? But we keep these going. These storms will sweep in. My friends here in lower Michigan, you guys are going to get some nasty weather too. Look at these storms kind of rumbling through later this evening into, western lower Michigan, this region here. We got some storms all the way up here into western Wisconsin, riding right towards like Duluth. Some storms are possible. Could weaken very quick. And there's the surface low. It finally pops up on the northern section of lower Michigan. And this is that low that actually is going to bring that severe weather to the south. it finally strengthens enough to actually show up on this model run. But this will spin around, bring some light to moderate rain across the UP and Michigan later tonight before eventually spinning on out into southern Ontario. So, looking out west, nothing going on in the southwest. Sorry to leave you guys hanging down here in the southwest. I'm not showing you folks. Ron, I apologize, my guy. And Las Vegas, just not really anything going on. You guys have had it easy over the last several weeks. Up here in the northwest, though, northern Rockies, we'll continue just to get this push of moisture into Montana from this low that produced all the severe weather yesterday. And, of course, when this moves into the higher elevations of Montana, this is for 7 p.m., 6 p.m. this evening, this afternoon. This is going to push in those higher elevations. It's going to produce some heavy snow in certain areas. And certain areas that are in the lower elevations, just a washout. A lot of rain expected. And this will continue just to push rain and snow all the way, back into areas of Idaho, Wyoming. But waking up tomorrow morning to more of it. Higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain. It's definitely a lot of moisture in this region. And speaking of snow, there it is. Higher elevations, Bighorn Mountain's going to get a lot. Laramie Range, Black Hills. A good bit of snow for May 7th, May 8th standards, for sure. Snow's piling up in the Rockies and Montana, Idaho, northern sections of Utah, even some snow in northern Nevada. So pretty wild stuff. But if you look at precipitation in general, man, these areas that aren't getting rain over the next 48 hours, that aren't getting snow, 2-3 inches of rain is possible for you folks. Karen, I know you live up here in Montana. Let me know what you see in your neck of the woods. For sure, I would love to know up here. But the winds are going to be pretty intense. We look at the wind swaths over the next. Let's just look over the next 24 hours. Pretty intense, guys. This is why you have blizzard warnings in some of these higher elevations of Montana. Very gusty winds will continue here in the northern plains. Just 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts across areas of Montana, eastern South Dakota. Very windy conditions in Wyoming, Colorado, so be aware of this. Temperatures, very warm all the way up into Canada. Starting to just get to that time of the year. A little bit of onshore flow, keeping you guys in Boston cool. That's just always this what kind of gives you guys the crud this time of the year. Just that onshore flow keeps you guys along the immediate coastline. Cooler, but you work your way inland, 60s and 70s. Southeast will be very humid, 80s and 90s. It'll feel like summer today in the southeast. Record-breaking high temperatures in Florida. It's going to get very hot in Florida today. I kind of talked about that a couple of days ago. Very humid, very hot today in the state of Florida. Let me know if you got any weather stations down there in the state and what your weather stations say for sure. Pretty hot down here in the deep south states and the Gulf Coast states. Warm 70s and 80s all the way up the Mississippi Valley into the Ohio Valley. And then we look out west, pocket of cooler air due to this lower pressure. But if you're not being, influenced by this at all, it's warming on up. Valley region of California, southwestern, Las Vegas, San Diego, LA, you guys, pretty nice temperatures, pretty nice conditions in this region. So we'll wrap this video up by talking about this for a little bit. Enhanced risk up for the entire state of Kentucky, you might as well say. Okay. It includes Nashville down to Memphis, Jackson, Tennessee. It includes, I would say, 60% of the state of Tennessee. Enhanced risk goes all the way down and includes about 80% of Arkansas, including Little Rock, Fayetteville, Fort Smith, all these areas. And then all the way down to extreme northeastern sections of Texas. Texarkana region, eastern Oklahoma, very small section of northwestern Louisiana. Slight risk goes around this, including Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Charleston, all the southern Alps, central Alps regions, Chattanooga, all the way down to Florence, Huntsville, Alabama, Tupelo, Greenville, Shreveport, Waco, Dallas, over the Tulsa, all the way, the Springfield. I've already said Indianapolis, but look at the marginal risk extending all the way up here, all the way into the northeast with this low that's going to move into southern Ontario. We kind of mentioned that. We got to watch that low severe weather potential also into this region. Severe weather potential down to the Carolinas, Columbia. So, there's a lot going on. What is this driven off of? Well, there's a little 2% risk right in here. A little bit of a triple point action, cold core setup. But Look at this huge area in this yellow. 10% risk of a tornado. Also a 10% risk of a strong tornado in this yellow area. This includes Nashville, Bowling Green, Evansville, Paducah, Kentucky, all of southern Illinois, right into the boot heel of Missouri, not including all of it, but a good chunk of it. Springfield, St. Louis, Jefferson, just about over to Columbia, Missouri. 10% risk of a strong tornado. 5% risk area includes, the rest of Tennessee, areas of North Carolina, some of the higher elevated regions, areas of Kentucky surrounding this. And there's just going to be a chance of significant weather, tornadoes tomorrow. Wind threat, large area that runs a 30% chance in the red of seeing winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. All right, and I think we could get a hatch risk because I am watching the development of a sweeping mesoscale convective system, MCS for short, that is going to sweep across these areas. And I think that when confidence increases on where that's going to happen, you're probably going to get a hatched risk of significant winds. And then the last thing we'll look at, I do apologize, is the hail risk. Red area, almost said a 1%, a 30% chance of 1 inch in diameter or larger hail. Yellow area, 15% risk of that. But look at this. I mean, black outline region, that is where you have a hatched risk. That means this entire black outline region with the black dash is going in between it. 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. Okay, so all we can do is really look at this, the HRRR model, and we'll move through this fast. Tomorrow morning, there's that line of storms making its way through Missouri already. Storms are starting to bubble up here in areas of Tennessee and western Kentucky again after seeing storms later on this afternoon, this evening. Look at these storms kind of making their way through southern Illinois. More of a conditional threat in Arkansas, maybe. Are these storms going to form? Look at these storms bubbling up here. These could be supercells down here in Tennessee. I know this is hard to see, guys. I'm just kind of giving a broad look at this. We'll dive much deeper into this tonight. And then we get into the late afternoon hours. That's when the storms explode. Back here in Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma. Look at these storms in central Arkansas, the Boot Heel, Missouri, southeastern Missouri. Look at these storms firing again in southern Illinois. Look at these nasty storms here in the triad of North Carolina, southern Virginia. These storms down here in southeast North Carolina. There's even storms firing down here off the sea breeze in Florida. And then by the time you start to get into later in the evening, you could have multiple clusters of intense storms. Look at this line of storms sweeping through the middle of the Mississippi Valley region right here. I mean, this is a nasty line of storms right in here, starting to enter western Kentucky, western Tennessee, moving out of Arkansas. And then you got this line of storms right up here. And then I really think this will begin to weaken. But you still got storms going in the middle of the night tomorrow night along the border of Virginia and North Carolina. But look at this line of storms in the middle of the night going through northern Mississippi, the heart of Tennessee and Kentucky. And these could be intense. That's why I do think if you're going to get a moderate risk tomorrow, I think it's going to be off significant winds. But we'll see what happens. But, man, we got to watch this. And then you see the significant tornado perimeter in this area. You see how it's spiking kind of closer to this low up here. This is where it really spikes. You see those numbers climb. But even into, southern sections of Missouri, and then look at Tennessee and western Kentucky, the numbers begin to climb. I mean, even after you get into the evening hours, these numbers begin to climb. You start to see 6s, 7s, even higher 10s. I mean, and then these storms are going to be eating up this environment supportive of tornadoes. Significant tornado perimeter is a big deal tomorrow. It really is. So, it'll be a longer video tonight. And you can see how these numbers basically go from 6, 7, 8s to nothing. It's because this line of storms is sweeping through this environment, eating up all the ingredients. And I know we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but we have this weird slight risk that extends all the way from Texas all the way up to the Baltimore, D.C. area for Thursday. We're probably going to get a highlighted area that runs more of a significant chance of tornadoes. We'll see what happens, but a huge elongated slight risk for Thursday also, guys. We'll have to figure that one out as we get closer. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again tonight.